It doesn't matter if you're in the ring or outside it, wrestling is a hazardous business. While we all gleefully delight in watching human bodies plummet from atop ladders, through tables, or onto spiky things, what goes on in front of the cameras is normally choreographed to be as safe as humanly possible. Real life, I'm very sorry to inform you, is not. Compared to the sort of trials awaiting them out there, the choreographed perils they endure as a day job usually pale in comparison. You see, pro wrestling is predominantly an American pursuit, and as a national pastime, its popularity only really wilts next to the true cultural behemoths of baseball, patriotism, and filing frivolous lawsuits against absolutely anybody who has ever done you wrong. And of course, in some cases, even people who very obviously haven't. Wrestlers, being the larger-than-life celebrities that they are, tend to get sued all the time. Usually it's for boring things like image rights, violated contracts, Brock, or mishaps inside the ring, but this being the most deranged industry on earth, sometimes the legal proceedings are more bizarre than any story that's been concocted by Vince and his team of breastfed soap writers. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 10 insane reasons wrestlers got sued. Number 10, allegedly being a dominatrix, Natalya. In 2014, convicted convict Christopher Donnelly attempted to sue Natalya because, and I'm quoting directly here, Neidhart was a dominatrix who had beaten him between the periods of 2005 and 2009 when they were together at hotels throughout the US, and had forced him into extreme sexual abuse and even to prostitute himself. He was seeking damages in the region of $250,000. Now, if you've not already made the leap here, I can tell you that not a single part of this is even remotely true. Possibly the biggest giveaway here was that Donnelly decided to take it upon himself to be his own legal representative in this case, despite having no background in it whatsoever. It took a county judge mere minutes to throw the case out and reprimand him for wasting everybody's time. Quite what Natalya thinks about this is anybody's guess, but I'm willing to bet she'd have quite happily obliged him some of that intense physical pain upon receiving the news. In a sensational rib, Total Divas would then send it to visit an actual dominatrix in the very next season. Number 9, being asked by a fan for a fight and obliging him, The Big Show. Shedding his gimmick as Andre the Giant's actual son in favour of his real-life gimmick of just being one of the lads, Paul White was relaxing after a WCW show in New York by joining some fans for a drink in a hotel bar. As I'm sure you can imagine, a man that size can put some serious sauce away, so the rowdiness levels around him tend to get a bit louty. However, one man present, a one Robert Sawyer, thought he should take things up a level by challenging The Big Show to a fight. Presumably, given that Sawyer himself was a fairly respectable 6'6", 220 plus pounds, he must have thought he could take him and repeatedly tried to goad his larger adversary with a series of verbal insults. He mocked both his ability and size to no avail before trying to push Show over. For his troubles, he received a right hook that simultaneously knocked him out and broke his jaw in the process, ending the fight about as quickly as it had started. He attempted to sue, Big Show's lawyers claimed self-defense, the judge realized the man was an idiot and found in the defendant's favour. Number 8, getting cattle prodded, Titus O'Neil. Now, right, look, if I give you a few small pieces of information, do you think you could organise them into a cohesive and true story? Because, I mean, I do, so let's try. 1. A WWE employee files a lawsuit against another WWE employee. 2. Titus O'Neil is jabbed with a cattle prod. 3. Paige is filming an episode of Swerved. Right, so you got all those now. A normal person, I'm sure, would probably assume that having been electrocuted by one of his colleagues, O'Neil sought legal damages for the physical trauma this no doubt caused. You would. Oh god, you'd be wrong though, as it's actually O'Neil, again the man literally getting jabbed with a cattle prod, who ended up on the wrong side of this, somehow. According to reports in TMZ, cameraman Donald Anderson claimed that O'Neil kicked his camera out of his hand after being shocked during the prank. And by that I mean literally shocked with electricity, not just surprised. Allegedly, he suffered serious injuries to his hands, fingers and wrist and was told to leave in fear of future attacks. For this, he was looking for over $1 million in damages, but settled out of court. Number 7, dropping a woman on a small child, The Rock and Triple H. God loves a trier, doesn't he? You all remember Judgment Day 2000, if only for it being where Undertaker first traded his life as a zombie, mortician, whatever, for just being a big dad on a bike. But it was a more memorable night for one Ronald Basham, who he alleged had his life changed forever. Merely a child at the time, Basham claimed that when The Rock and Triple H had spilled their match out into the crowd, they'd crushed him under the weight of a falling woman and displayed reckless, willful, and wanton conduct. The injuries he obtained under the woman had led to years of physical trauma and curtailed his life. He also tried to sue the WWE for not providing proper safety for fans, but his case immediately hit a bit of a brick wall when it was revealed that he'd not only been an active participant of several sports growing up, but an enthusiastic stock car racer. The fact he waited until he was 17 before he decided to file the charges probably didn't help either. Number 6, just being in a video game. Randy Orton. Now, technically, Randy Orton didn't get both himself and WWE in trouble for merely appearing in the video game, but rather his appearance in them was the issue. Specifically, by creating an incredible lifelike model of the wrestler, WWE and 2K were infringing upon the intellectual property of the woman who designed his tattoos. You see, it's actually artist Catherine Alexander who owns the rights to Orton's body ink, despite the fact they are literally on his body. WWE should have been well aware of this though, after they had a similar legal standoff over using his likeness in a range of toys and were promptly told to go take a run and jump when they offered her a pitiful $450 for them. Now, precisely what Orton's degree of liability is here, given that the work is printed on his body and he'll presumably have given either his employers or 2K permission to use him in the games, we don't know. This one's still ongoing actually, and a trial date was initially set for April 2020, but it's subsequently been moved back with everything else that's going on. It will be rescheduled for later in the year, and I guess I'll let you know what happens. Number 6, giving another wrestler hepatitis. Abdullah the Butcher. Right, okay, Abdullah the Butcher was, and God, I'm not sure how to totally put this, very at ease with the idea of slicing up both his flesh and the flesh of his opponents for the amusement of crowds regardless of their size. 3,000 capacity indie showpiece, he will bleed everywhere for you. Bingo hall with like 24 people, only 6 of whom weren't on the guest list, he'll just bleed everywhere for you. Anyway, on a 2007 show, Abdullah was set to take on Hannibal in a match that nobody on earth was calling a potential technical masterpiece. They came to blows, cut each other up, and everyone in attendance left feeling like either A, they got their money's worth, or B, just a bit sick. However, for Hannibal, real name Devin Nicholson, there was to be severe consequences. Discovering that he had contracted hepatitis C, Nicholson took Abdullah to court, alleging that he'd sliced them both with the same blade. This caused the spread of the disease, and that scuppered his chances of signing with WWE. Abdullah, in his defense, claimed that as Nicholson was the promoter, he was just doing what he was told, but the court ordered him to pay $2.3 million in damages. Number 4, shagging Hulk Hogan. Now, the legal history between Hulk Hogan and his ex-wife Linda is both confusing and complicated. Between them, the pair have sued and countersued more times than Hogan worked WrestleMania, probably, I haven't checked, and the precise arrangement they now have over who gets what percentage of whose money is unclear. One thing that absolutely is obvious though is that all of this stems from Hogan's insatiable desire to have sex with women he isn't married to. Despite a marriage that had survived over 2 decades, rumours of his affairs were legendary by the latter part of the 2000s. Then in 2009, really hit the fan, brother, when it emerged Hogan had been cheating on his wife with Christiane Plante, a friend of his daughter Brooke. This led to an almighty divorce settlement that cost Hogan 70% of the family assets, $3 million in property, and 40% of all future earnings. A few years later, the infamous Gorka case, where Hogan had been caught shagging his best friend's wife, netted him a juicy $31 million settlement, only for Linda to assert that Hogan was withholding specifics over his income and go after him for a slice of that. Number 3, just having a laugh. Hulk Hogan again. Good one we literally have the footage of. At the height of his fame, Hogan and his good pal Mr. T appeared on the Richard Belzer light entertainment show to do some incredibly light entertaining. They were just big lads, 2 big lads there to have a big laugh, but the presenter, big square corporate dork Richard Belzer, just couldn't take a joke properly and passed out. Nerd. Hogan was just doing what any normal 6'7", 300-pound man would have done in his position and applied a shoot sleeper hold to the 120 pounds when soaking wet TV anchor. Belzer, seemingly leaving his sense of humour at home, presumably in the pocket of some other god-awful tweed jacket, stopped breathing and passed out between the pythons. Undoubtedly wounded that his very funny joke had been taken the wrong way, Hogan released the hold and Belzer, not satisfied with just ruining the segment for everyone, collapsed onto the ground and split his head open on the studio floor. He sued Hogan for $5 million, settled out of court, then stiffed his own lawyers on the fees, causing them to call him a paradigm of ingratitude. Number 2, calling someone one of the most worthless pieces of shit I have ever met in my entire life. CM Punk. As far as defamation suits go, if you're going to wind up in one, you might as well go all out. There's no point saying somebody was loosely incompetent or that their inaction might have negatively impacted a delicate situation or whatever. If you're gonna wind up in court anyway, just fucking bury the guy, IMHO. Specifically, do what CM Punk did in the now legendary Art of Wrestling podcast with Colt Cabana, where, when discussing all the events that led to him walking out on WWE, took a figurative bat to the figurative skull of Dr. Chris Aman's quite literal reputation. So I roll into the corner and I motion to Doc, I go, I have a concussion. And he was like, what do you want me to do? And I just started laughing and I was like, Doc, you are one of the most worthless pieces of shit I have ever met in my entire life. This line, as well as several suggestions of both incompetence and malpractice, led to wrestling's most high-profile lawsuit of recent years. Punk, after much legal wrangling, eventually won the $1 million civil suit. Number 1, disrespecting a panda, Vince McMahon. Everybody knows that the WWF were forced to rebrand to WWE when the crushing weight of the World Wildlife Foundation was brought to bear against Titan Towers. However, what it was specifically that it irked the wildness preservation bods tends to get diluted by the scale of the fallout. After all, both WWFs had coexisted in harmony for decades prior. The short version of this story is that with both companies enjoying large-scale expansion in the 1980s, they were inevitably set on a collision course over the shared name. But in 1994, a deal was struck between the two that allowed them both to use the initialism, with Vince promising that the company would largely refer to itself as the World Wrestling Federation rather than the WWF in its published materials. However, when the boom of the Attitude Era went straight to both Vince's crotch and his pockets, his newfound sense of invincibility stopped him giving a single solitary about what anyone else thought. He began using the term WWF completely freely, the pandas said not on our watch buddy, and a few short years later, they stripped him of it entirely. So there you have it, those are 10 insane reasons wrestlers got sued, and yes, Vince McMahon is a wrestler. Let me know what you made of it all in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. In the meantime though, thank you so much for watching. I have of course been Adam Cleary, a man who, at the risk of jinxing it, still hasn't been sued yet, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.